Welcome back to Haunted and Historic Australia for another episode of Criminal Cutthroats and Convicts and our Sydney Park serial killer series. Episode 10 is a difficult one to tell. I was hoping there wouldn't be a child murdered, but there was. Sadly, even younger than Bessie. Joan Norma Ginn was an 11-year-old girl murdered in one of the worst ways you could imagine. Outraged, yes, and bitten too. She was strangled with her own singlet and left in the centre of Newtown Cemetery. This was June of 1946. In 1946, the war was over, but not all men came back. Not all men that came back well. It was never proven that her killer was a military man, but he was sighted wearing a coat that looked to be of the military kind. And though we won't go into the details, as it is truly disgusting and gut-wrenching to tell, her story should be told, and it has been before. It must be told to remind us to look after our little ones. Never let them out of your sight unless you are absolutely confident they are safe. Even then, most parents will always worry. This is the story of Joan Norma Ginn, who was born in 1935, one of 5 children to William and Elizabeth Ginn. Her parents divorced before she was murdered, and Elizabeth, her mother, married a Frederick Charles Norris. He became her stepfather. A happy child who wished only to help her ma was, on this fateful day, June 11th, trying to obtain a loaf of bread for the family. On Tuesday, the 11th of June, Elizabeth Norris asked her daughter Joan to go and buy a loaf of bread from the local shops. She wasn't gone long before she was back stating that they had no bread, which at the time wasn't unusual. Bread was really only sold at bakeries and only a few loaves sold at the grocers. So why did they have no bread? Possibly the bakeries were closed by the time Joan visited, or due to post-war economic restrictions, they ran out quickly. After dinner, around 6 p.m, she asked her mother could she go to a nearby cousin's house, Mrs. Hazel Geary, to ask her for bread. Her mother allowed and told her to take the tram, but to come back straight away. She did give her some money to take along. She arrived at Cousin Hazel's house, but she didn't have any bread to spare. Joan stayed a little while to play with Hazel's baby before leaving. Hazel advised that there may be some bread at a milk bar down near the cemetery, but to try them and then leave promptly as it was a dangerous area. Joan left from Hazel's house and proceeded to the cemetery milk bar. This is most likely where she gained attention. She went to the milk bar, but they also had no bread. Instead of leaving promptly, the girls, still on the mission to buy bread, wandered around the area, looking for stores open and asking various people on the street if they knew where to buy bread, possibly even asking her own murderer. Now, we love our cemeteries, and most historical groups look after them on a voluntary basis. But during wartime, these Sydney cemeteries, especially older ones not being used, were left to go to ruin. It wasn't a priority at the time. At this time, the cemeteries were a haven for drunks and homeless people, an incredibly dangerous place for a child at night, and it was exactly near where Joan was. They also didn't look after the veterans as well as they do now. Often after the war, they were left to fend for themselves. Some had mental issues and PTSD upon returning home. Worse for the Vietnam vets who were shunned by the public, many anti-war protesting groups, and even the RSL branches. Yes, the very men who fought before them in wars discarded them. It was a war that shouldn't have happened, and they were to blame. But back to Joan. Now, there were a few people that saw Joan that afternoon. She was seen by 2 girls she went to school with at Enmore Public School. A Patricia Jones, 11, said Joan walked past, hand in hand with a man, shortly after they left school. This would have been between 4 and 5. The man was bearded and they were on Metropolitan Road near the Enmore Theatre. This was quite early. Could she have run into the man earlier and wanted to meet up again later? Patricia didn't recognise the man, but also didn't see his face clearly. She said he needed a shave and he was wearing very dirty grey trousers and a coat. Another account was of 13-year-old Melva Buckley, who said she was walking into a fruit shop while Joan and a man were outside. The man was very untidily dressed in an open-neck shirt, a large overcoat and grey trousers. This, she said, would have been between 7 and 8, after being to Hazel's and the cemetery milk bar. Now things get hard for police. Her mother says she left at 5:30. It's also been recorded as 6 or 6:15. It was the first time that Elizabeth had let Joan go out at night. Could it be possible that being allowed out late at night was exciting enough to want to prolong that length of time? Or did the man she met earlier persuade her to come out to see him again? So is it Joan's idea to go out or her mother's? Elizabeth said it wasn't even that dark when she left. Well, I don't know about you, but in Sydney in June, it's winter. It's pitch black by 5 o'clock. And Joan was also only wearing a light blue jacket over a yellow cardigan over a pink school dress. It's a bit late to be out dressed like that. But then it was the 1940s. There was one more witness, a Letitia Byrne, who saw them inside a telephone booth near the cemetery. The man was on the phone and the girl sitting with a brown paper bag. As they came out of the booth, Miss Byrne went in. She overheard the man say that they should go to the park. Joan replied friendly enough with, "No, I can't go yet. I haven't got the loaf of bread." The man pointed toward the cemetery and said, "Let's go this way then." He obviously appeared to be helping her get the bread, but instead he was luring her to her death. Around this time, her mother was worried. She hadn't been back in hours. Her stepfather was home and he said he'd go and search the streets for her. After about an hour, he came back with nothing. They decided to contact police. The police did an immediate search throughout the night, but it wasn't until 7 a.m. that someone searching through the cemetery found her attacked body. The extent of the girl's injuries shocked even police who were on the scene. How could someone be this obscene and deranged to attack a child? With the absence of footprints around the body, they believe that he may have even attacked her before bringing her into the cemetery. He may have carried her. There were a couple of loose palings in the fence that could have been used to get in and out of the cemetery without being detected. This was near to where the telephone booth was that they were seen at earlier. The coroner believed that although she died of asphyxiation from her singlet being wrapped around her throat, she was likely to have been unconscious due to a punch that shattered her jaw. It left a large welt on her cheek as well as a large blow to the back of her head, where she must have hit the ground. She would have been unresponsive to the attacker. The wounds inflicted while she was unconscious hopefully gave the creature no joy. Afterwards, he fled like the rat he was, leaving her there in the centre of the cemetery, not even trying to conceal her. This must have meant he wanted to be out of there quickly. Perhaps he didn't realise she was so young. Or maybe he didn't intend on killing her. But maybe when they got to the cemetery, she started screaming, realising that she was in danger. And this caused him to hit her. And once she was unconscious, the fiend couldn't help himself. It doesn't feel calculated. It feels sloppy and rushed. He lured the girl but wasn't afraid of being seen. Did he panic and kill her? Or was he just demented and had no worry he would be found? They don't believe he was a local, as many men from the town were interviewed and all had alibis, as well as the witnesses not being able to identify anyone in town. Even the people that they brought forward for the witnesses were discounted. They just couldn't be sure that that was the man they saw with Joan. Joan's funeral was very publicised. The paparazzi was in full force. They had the children of Enmore Public School follow the hearse down to the eastern suburbs Memorial Park, where she was laid to rest. Speaking of cemeteries, the community was infuriated that this could happen in their own town, at a cemetery no less. They were calling it the Newtown Jungle, full of homeless people and derelicts. They wanted it gone, and they wanted a memorial park in its place. It took approximately 15 years to have the conversion from cemetery to memorial park, and there's only a quarter of the original headstones from the cemetery still there, which is a real shame because there were quite a lot of people buried there from Sydney's history. Musicians, people that were killed on the Dunbar ship that crashed into the Gap. Many notable people in society were buried there. Not to mention the bodies that were relocated from the old Sydney Burial Ground or Devonshire Street Cemetery. Yes, the cemetery that they moved, or supposedly moved, to make way for Central Station. Those bodies were moved to Camperdown, Newtown Cemetery, and they are still there. They may have moved the headstones, but the bodies remain under the ground. They may not be on the surface level, but they're still there. But this is something that we've seen happening everywhere. It's not just the one cemetery. There are many parks around Sydney that were originally cemeteries, and the bodies are still there. It's a little difficult to understand, but it's made it a lot nicer, and you can understand why the people in the community wanted it that way. One thing saddens me though is that there's no memorial for poor Joan. You'd think there would have been something there to acknowledge what happened there for Joan. There is a petition which I've signed, and you can choose to give money towards it if you want to. Otherwise, just signing the petition to get something done for Joan would be nice after what happened to her. It's the least the community could do when it wasn't there to protect her all those years ago. With very few leads to go on, the police appealed to the public. They only had the description given by the witnesses. They had posters and adverts placed at the beginning of the movies in all the theatres around Sydney. They also had a mannequin dressed in the clothes that Joan was wearing the day she was murdered. They were hoping it would generate calls of people who knew something, but they got the usual wackos instead, even 3 men confessing to the murder. Once police had interrogated them, they worked out that none of them could have been the murderer. They just didn't have the right facts. So it remained unsolved, and they hoped somebody would come forward. There was even a man who said he heard voices about who the murderer was, and they were about Joan. They looked into this too, but were never able to get anywhere with it. Sadly, her case too was left unsolved. Joan's case was horrific, as it happened to a child. This is why it was important it was included. She wasn't the only child killed in Sydney's history. Just 20 years later, we had the Wanda murders in Cronulla, which we will feature at a later time. Joan's case was significant as it was a turning point for most families. Despite her mother saying she would never have walked off with a stranger, her child, if witnesses could be believed, not only voluntarily walked and talked with this man, but held his hand. Joan's case was very strange, but also similar to others, being a strangulation case, as well as in a secluded park-like area. Linked this to the murders of the others. Only 5 months later, The Sydney Park serial killer strikes again, and it isn't too far from our last couple of victims. Could it be the same man has killed all of them? Or were there multiple killers roaming in the 1940s? Stay tuned to find out. If you're enjoying these episodes, give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell. Well, you know why. Till next time.